What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to do a full story video. A full story video is when I sit down and take a bunch of videos that tell one overarching story and combine them together into one big video. Now, today's full story video is going to be about, well, X-Force. We had covered the first 15 issues of X-Force, and I kind of want to sit down and put all 15 issues into one big video because this is the early days of X-Force. As we all know, when it came to X-Men comics, at the tail end of New Mutants, well, we begin to see the New Mutant team begin to break apart. You had different members leaving after Cable had taken over the team, and then soon after that, it was changed into X-Force, this very aggressive, hardcore team given to us in the early 1990s. And so I want to cover, or really, I want to put all the books that lead into the Executioner song into one big video to kind of show you what the early days of X-Force was all about. And so I do hope you enjoy today's comic book video. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics, but now we are going to pick up with X-Force. Now, this was a big moment back in 1991 for Marvel Comics, and let me explain why. So, when it came to the original run for New Mutants, at the tail end of that run, we had Cable appeared. Now, when he appeared, it was a big moment because we began to see different members of the New Mutants begin to leave the team for different reasons. But we then had new heroes come in to replace the ones that had left, like Shatterstar and Domino, and the list goes on. But by the end of the New Mutant series, well, we had a brand new team almost, besides for Cannonball and Boom Boom, who stuck behind Cable. But also, when it came to Cable appearing, it was no longer, hey, the New Mutants are young kids who are trying to learn about their powers or trying to learn how to be heroes. No, it was now more like, we have to go to war. We have many different enemies out there who are trying to come after us and the other X teams. One of the X teams has to go out of their way to actually chase down the bad guys and bring them down. We're at war at this moment, and bam, here comes X-Force. And really, it works better for Cable because when he first appeared, he tried the role as a teacher, but he realized that can't be him. And so the role changed. He's now a general. He's now trying to lead a small army against all the different enemies out there. And bam, now we have X-Force. And so as we dive into X-Force number 1, we actually see our heroes going after the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, this was a new group introduced back at the tail end of New Mutants as well. Now, when it came to this group, we were kind of left to believe that they were a group of mutants who were trying to go out of their way to help the mutant race out because it felt like the American government were trying to bring them down in some kind of way. And so they would attack different government facilities across the country. But then later on, we did learn that they're being led by a character known as Strife. Now, for the sake of this video, we're going to pretend like we have no idea who this guy is. But apparently, there is a connection between him and Cable. And so when it comes to X-Force, they found one of the bases that belonged to Strife in Antarctica. And you have our heroes trying their best to bring down the actual base. Now, like I said earlier, X-Force is a team going to war, and usually in war, there's going to be a lot of deaths. And so for our heroes, they're like, hey, we are treating you guys as enemies. If we have to bring you down by killing you, they will actually do it. And so we see Shatterstar going after a character known as Reaper, one of the members of the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, their battle is very short-lived, but you actually have Shatterstar being able to cut off the hands of Reaper to kind of show like, hey, we're not playing around. Like, that was your warning, shot, I guess. But down the road, I will try to kill you instead. But for our heroes, they know if they want to bring down the whole organization, the Mutant Liberation Front, they have to find their leader. They have to find Strife. Now, Strife is there, but not in the main room where the battle is taking place. He's in a different room watching our heroes fight against his own team. Now for Strife, he realized that this base is now compromised. He has to get the heck out of there now. And so he tells a character known as Zero to begin to open up portals to allow the different members of his group to actually escape. And then the entire base is going to self-destruct. He's also hoping when the place blows up, it would also kill off X-Force as well, even though we already know they are going to survive very easily. Now, something else I do want to mention is that we don't know the actual origin for most of these characters who had joined X-Force or who had joined the Mutant Liberation Front. For example, Feral. All we know about her at this point is that she was on the run and she was able to find X-Force and she had joined the team. Bam. That's really it. We have no idea about her past at all. And the same thing for Wildside as well, a member of the Mutant Liberation Front. Really, for Cable as well, we have no idea about his origin either. And so most of these characters, we're trying to learn more and more about them as stories being told to us in X-Force, but also other books down the road. And really, you have our heroes realize that one, Strife and the different members of the MLF, Mutant Liberation Front, were able to get away thanks to Zero. And so you have our heroes also realize the place is about to blow up. And so you have Cable being able to teleport his team out of there just in time before the actual place blows up on them. Now, X-Force number 1 also reminds us about another character known as Gideon. Now, we don't know much about Gideon, but apparently he does have a past with Sunspot. They do have a connection with one another. And really, when it came to Gideon, at the tail end of New Mutants, we actually saw him assassinate the father of Sunspot to allow Sunspot to become the owner of the company. But we already know that Gideon does have plans for the actual operation that Sunspot now controls. But either way, we do see our two characters right now training with one another, but they're getting ready to buy out another company known as the Jankos Company. And we're going to see Jankos be somewhat important as a way to bring in another character we have not seen in a good while. And really, we're also introduced to another new character, and that will be Commander Bridge. Now, Commander Bridge actually works for S.H.I.E.L.D. as well, but apparently he has been trying his best to locate Cable. And the reason why, because S.H.I.E.L.D. believes that Cable has just gone too far. They have no idea what Cable is trying to do, or why Cable is going after the Mutant Liberation Front. And so this is Commander Bridge saying, you know what? It's time for me to go after Cable. It's time for me to bring him down. But now we can jump over to the base of X-Force. And really, this gives us the chance to kind of learn a tad bit more about Cable here. And let me explain. So for Cable, like I said earlier, we don't know much about the character. But you have Cannonball coming to him and asking him like, hey, I want to know, why are you so protective over us? Is it all because of your son, Tyler? Now, you would think at first like, okay, Cable has a son. No, not actually a son, but somebody he looked at as a son. A character known as Tyler, a young boy who fought alongside with him many years ago. Now, Tyler died because after a year, Tyler left Cable behind to go join Strife and his Mutant Liberation Front. Now, while being with them, he actually died in one of their terrorist attacks. And so for Cable, he's kind of like, it gave him another reason why to go after Strife. Like, first, you took the kid away from me by having him join your group, and then he was killed in one of your planned attacks against a government facility. And so for Cable, he's really upset at Strife for that reason, but there's also other reasons as well we'll see down the road in later books. But now it gives Cannonball a better idea of who Cable truly is. Now, Domino, she overheard what Cable had told Cannonball. And so once you have Cannonball leave the room, it's Domino realizing that this is Cable trying to begin the process of opening up more to the different members of the team, but the ones he truly does like Cannonball. And so for Domino, she's kind of wondering, when will Cable tell them everything about his past? Like, for example, the idea that he has powers. We do see him right now using his telekinesis to move different items to help him repair the jet they use to travel across the world. And so once he does that, she said, hey, you have to be careful, because if the other members of the team see you doing that, they're going to have way more questions about your past and what other powers you may have. And this is Cable saying, when I'm ready, and I'll tell them everything then. But now I want to jump back over to Gideon and Sunspot, because like I said earlier, they were trying to buy out a company called Jankos that is currently being controlled by another character known as Ariana Jankos. Now for Ariana Jankos, she was trying her best to make sure that her company is not completely bought out. So what she did was she called up Black Tom. Now Black Tom is a character that we had talked about before. Black Tom is actually the cousin to Banshee, who has the ability to control wood. Now, when it comes to Black Tom, what he's going to do here is he's going to hold Sunspot and Gideon hostage so that they're able to hand over money to help Ariana buy out the other shares of her company so that she's able to hold on to her company. Now, for Sunspot, he's kind of like, hey, you know what? Let me go ahead and beat him down. But you have Gideon say, wait, don't do that. We'll stay here right now and see what he's actually up to. But now we jump back over to Commander Bridge. And really, it's Commander Bridge calling up Nick Fury to kind of get us confirmation that he does work for S.H.I.E.L.D. But this is Commander Bridge saying, hey, Nick, I want to tell you that it was Cable again who attacked another base that belonged to the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, for Nick Fury, it seemed like he does not mind all these other organizations out there like Hydra and AIM, but it really does bother him that he does not know what Cable is actually up to. And so he tells Commander Bridge, I'm gonna need you to go out of your way to find Cable and bring him in for questioning. I need to know what this man is actually up to. And right after that conversation, you didn't have Commander Bridge say, it's now time for us to call in Weapon X. But now we can dive into X-Force issue number 2, where we actually pick up with a character known as Weapon X. Now, as you may know, Weapon X was the name given to Wolverine back when he was at Weapon X. But this is somebody else taking up the name. His name is Garrison Kane. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to learn much about the character. We do know that he's working for an organization known as Department K, and that's all we get out of him. Now, when it comes to Department K, again, we're not going to know much about that idea until down the road in later books. But the reason why you have Weapon X right now about to go after Deadpool is because around this time in Marvel Comics, Deadpool was working for somebody known as Tolliver. Now, we have no idea who Tolliver is, but apparently he goes out of his way to hide the best mercenaries to complete different jobs. And right now, he had hired Deadpool to complete a certain job. Now, you have Weapon X try his best to take down Deadpool, which honestly he does. But I really want to focus on Deadpool here. And the reason why, because for me, this was really the first time we can actually see that Deadpool is the merc with the mouth. The last time we saw Deadpool, he was talking some nonsense, but not a lot like he is right now in this battle. And for Weapon X, he knows that this is Deadpool trying to do that as a way to throw him off, to allow him to lose against Deadpool. But Weapon X is able to take down Deadpool. Now, after doing that, he's then confronted by, of course, Commander Bridge. Now, really, this is Commander Bridge informing Weapon X that S.H.I.E.L.D. is right now putting together a team to go after Cable. Now, this is where we learn that apparently there's some kind of connection between Weapon X and Cable. Now, what that connection is unknown, but we do learn that these two guys have a history with one another. Now, this is also Commander Bridge asking Weapon X to join the team to hopefully bring Cable in. But you have Weapon X say no. And the reason why, because when it comes to Cable, there are way too many people involved when it comes to trying to understand him, but also going after him. And so for Weapon X, it's a huge no. Now, while you have the two guys talking to one another, well, Deadpool was able to get away because he has a device that allows him to teleport, which he did when they were busy talking. But now we jump over to X-Force. Now, X-Force is going through a training session where it's Cable saying you have to be ready just in case anything happens. You never know when you might get ambushed by one of our enemies. And when you are, you have to adapt to that situation to make sure that you come out alive. And so for Cable, he's saying, you guys, most of the X-Force team is going through the woods for this training session. Your opponent is Feral, one of our own, but she's basically a wild animal on the loose in the forest who has the ability to hide in different spots to just ambush you to hopefully bring you down. And so when she attacks you, it's up to you to work together as a team to overcome the ambush, to again adapt to your situation. Now, at first, it does seem like a great training session, a great idea, but the problem is, while you have Feral begin to lose the actual training session, she goes feral to the point where she actually attacks Cannonball, cutting him right in the stomach. And he's now bleeding out badly. Now, Cable was able to knock her out, but now the team has to rush back to their base to hopefully save the life of Cannonball. But now we jump over to Ariana Jankos and Black Tom to kind of learn more about the deal. Like, yes, we do know that Black Tom helped Ariana keep her company, but what is she going to do to help out Black Tom? And so we learned that after you have Black Tom being able to save her company, she had all her scientists work together to build a interdimensional gateway to allow someone to come back to Earth. And so, with that being said, somebody who's very close to Black Tom is coming back to Earth, and that would be the Juggernaut. Now, the last time we saw this character was back in Acts of Vengeance, when he went up against Thor, and Thor was able to make a makeshift prison and throw Juggernaut into space to hopefully keep him away for a very long time. Well, unfortunately, this guy came back thanks to this interdimensional gateway. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics, but now we have to jump back over to X-Force, and we have to cover Sabotage. Sabotage was a small little crossover in the early 1990s with X-Force and also Spider-Man. So you had X-Force issue number 3 and 4, and you had Spider-Man issue number 16 for this crossover. Now, this is X-Force really just going up against Juggernaut, but having the help of Spider-Man as well. So it did make for a somewhat interesting story arc, but it kind of showed how X-Force is very serious about the idea of making sure their opponents are not really able to get back up again at the end of the battle. And you see what I mean as we go through today's video. Just focus on Cable. Now, Sabotage does pick up where our last video left off at. You see, at the end of our last video, we had saw Black Tom team up with Ariana Jankos. Now, Ariana Jankos had a company that was getting bought out by other companies like Sunspot's company and Gideon's company. And so she asked Black Tom for help, which he was able to do. You see, you have Black Tom being able to have everyone be held as hostages and then give money over to him and Ariana as a way to save her company. Now, in return, Ariana and her scientists had to build Black Tom a teleporter, which was the way to bring Juggernaut back down to Earth. Now, word got out very quickly to the public, and well, Siren heard about what's happening with her uncle, Black Tom. Now, like I said, Siren is the niece to Black Tom, but she's also the daughter to Banshee. But she feels like she has to handle this situation because it's her uncle causing problems again. And so she does try her best to fly over to stop Black Tom and Juggernaut, but you cannot stop the Juggernaut. And so he is able to send her flying back where she came from. Now, once she's able to catch herself, she's then confronted by X-Force. And this is X-Force saying, hey, we should team up and bring them down. Now, this is also Cable kind of giving us another example of saying, hey, listen, if we're going to go after somebody, we're going to make sure that they cannot get back up again. Because he is saying like, hey, we are going to do what the Avengers and the Fantastic Four are not willing to do. Now, for a quick reminder, Sunspot and Gideon are being held as hostages, but like Gideon is just waiting for the right time to actually attack Black Tom. And right now, this is the worst time because Black Tom now has a Juggernaut by his side. And so Sunspot has no choice but to just wait alongside with Gideon to have Gideon tell him, okay, it's our time to attack. But once you have X-Force arrive, you have Warpath being able to grab onto Juggernaut and they both fall off the top of the building down to the ground level. Now, the rest of X-Force, they're there as well, but the rest of X-Force are inside the building trying to clear out all the guards who are trying to protect the place, but also protecting Black Tom and Ariana Jenkos as well. But again, you have our heroes being able to move very quickly. But inside the actual building, we do see that Gideon believes that this is the right time to actually attack Black Tom. Now, Gideon tries, but he quickly fails. Black Tom was able to take him down very easily. Now, Sunspot, he's also there, and he believes that he might have the chance to take down Black Tom. Now, once you have Sunspot begin to use his powers, Black Tom remembers who Sunspot is as one of the many students of Charles Xavier. But you have Black Tom being able to take down Sunspot as well. Now, right before you have Black Tom about to give Sunspot another beating, you have Cable arrive and being able to shoot Black Tom in the back. But getting back over to our battle between Warpath and Juggernaut, you do have our two characters going back and forth. Now really, Warpath can't win this battle because it's the Juggernaut. Like, this dude is just unbeatable by your normal standards. And so he is able to kind of go back and forth with Warpath, but sooner or later Warpath is going to lose. Now, luckily for Warpath, another hero does arrive, and that would be Spider-Man. He was just swinging by and he heard that something big was going down in this area. Except as soon as he arrives and believes that he should jump in to help out Warpath to take down Juggernaut, one of the towers in this area gets blown up. And so now Spider-Man is freaking out about the innocent people who could be affected by that explosion. But now we have to jump into Spider-Man issue number 16, the second part of this story. Well, in some cases, it's actually the first part of Sabotage. It's kind of weird. Either way, you have Warpath getting out of debris that fell on top of him, and the same for Juggernaut as well. Now for Spider-Man, he had to dodge all debris that was in the air. But after doing that, we do learn that one of the towers of the World Trade Center was just blown up. And so we're kind of left to wonder about some of the members of X-Force who were inside the building. Now, you do have Shatterstar and Pharaoh come out of the building to join Warpath in his battle against Juggernaut. Now, Spider-Man sees X-Force trying to bring down Juggernaut, but he kind of wondering if he should jump in or not, because these kids, as he calls them, have no idea how to take this guy down. The Juggernaut is not just an easy opponent you can take down so easily. And so with all the heroes being here, he's the only one who truly knows how to take down the Juggernaut. Now you have Cannonball trying to fly in and use his powers to take down Juggernaut, but Cannonball is sent back flying. Now, luckily, Cannonball was saved by Spider-Man, or really, he crashed into Spider-Man, but it's a way to bring Peter into the actual battle now. Now, inside the building, we do learn that Cable and the others who are with him are actually okay. They were able to survive the actual explosion. But the problem is Black Tom has disappeared. And so you have Cable tell Domino and Siren to go join the rest of X-Force to take down Juggernaut, while Cable goes after Black Tom to most likely try to kill off Black Tom so that he will not try to come back again down the road. And really, Siren and Domino might possibly help the others out when it comes to fighting against Juggernaut. But while they're fighting against him, you have Juggernaut realize that Spider-Man is there. And like I said earlier, Peter is the only person here right now who has actually fought against the Juggernaut before. And so when he sees Spider-Man, he's all like, hey, this is not your battle at all. It's between me and them. So you can go ahead and leave right now so that we are able to continue on with our battle. But now we have to transition back inside the building. Now we see that Gideon does not like Cable at all. He really hates the idea of seeing other people just listen to Cable so easily without any kind of talkback at all. Now for Gideon, he also blames Cable for the bomb going off. He feels like if Cable had taken down Black Tom fast and quick, that bomb would have not gone off. And now there's innocent people who are in danger thanks to that explosion. Now, it's also Gideon saying like, hey, you know, Cable, I feel like you love the idea of war. You love the idea of going up against different characters and fighting them. That is why you didn't take Black Tom down so easily. Now, for Cable, he hates to hear what Gideon is saying. And he tells Gideon, dude, you know what? We have people right now who need our help. And here you are right now trying to blame me for the bomb going off. Why don't you take some responsibility for your actions for not also taking down Black Tom earlier, and now go out there and help out the innocent people who were affected by this explosion? Now, it does seem like Cable and Gideon are about to fight against one another, but you have Domino being able to get in between both guys before they go to blows against one another. Now, I want to get back over to Spider-Man because for me, this was a funny moment. So you have Peter tell Juggernaut to just go ahead and just stand down, like stop fighting, we can all relax here. But for Juggernaut, that cannot happen at all. And so you have Peter tell X-Force while they pull, he'll push, and they were able to bring Juggernaut down to his knees. Now that actually does tick him off a lot. He's kind of like, okay, you know what? It's time for me to squash the bug, but to also kill off X-Force as well. Now, because X-Force is kind of like a war team, they're really down with the idea of just going ahead and killing off Juggernaut. And so you have Shatterstar try to stab him, which he's able to do. He is able to stab Juggernaut right in the eyes. But the problem is Juggernaut powers are really more magic based. So he is able to easily heal up just like that. And so once he's able to heal up, he does express how angry he is right now at Shatterstar for stabbing him in the eye. And so you have Juggernaut being able to collapse another part of the building right on top of our heroes. Now, luckily Warpath was able to protect the heroes from the collapsed building, but now our heroes must come together once again to hopefully and finally bring down the Juggernaut. And so as we get into X-Force issue number 4, we kind of get the same thing continuing on. The idea of X-Force just trying to find a way to bring down Juggernaut. And you do have Spider-Man trying his own kind of ways to help the team out, but unfortunately, they can't bring the guy down. Now, it does seem like the Juggernaut has now entered this feral state of mind where he's just full of rage and just wants to beat down on our heroes right at this exact moment. But they're trying their best to find different ways to harm him. But like I said earlier, the dude is magic based, so he is able to heal up very fast. So our heroes, all their attacks are coming out, well, technically pointless. But getting back inside the actual building, we do see Cable being able to have a standoff with Black Tom. Now, for Cable, he wants to know, why did Black Tom do all of this for? And you have Black Tom say, listen, the reason why I did all of this is so that I'm, one, able to bring back Juggernaut, and two, I want to bring an X team here so that I am able to kill them off. So he had a plan to kill off at least one of the X teams, but of course he was not able to do that. Now, the standoff does end with Cable being able to actually shoot Black Tom down into an elevator shaft. Now, Black Tom is hanging for his life, but for Cable, like I said earlier, X-Force, they're not here to just play the nice superheroes. They're here to put down their enemies to make sure they cannot get back up again. And so you have Cable shoot Black Tom a couple more times to make sure he does fall down the elevator shaft, and we're left to believe that Black Tom is actually dead. Except at the very last second, we do learn that Black Tom is not actually dead. He was actually saved by Deadpool. And apparently Deadpool is being told to bring Black Tom in to meet this mysterious character known as Mr. Tolliver. Now, this is where the story begins to wrap up very, very quickly, because you do have X-Force trying their best to bring down the Juggernaut. Matter of fact, they even took off his helmet, believing that they might be able to do some severe damage to his head. Except you didn't have Cable walk in. Now, Cable is ticked off, and he's kind of like, you know what? Enough is enough. I am tired of dealing with a mutant as stupid as you. Now, we already know that Juggernaut is not a mutant, so that line right there made no sense to me. But either way, you do have Cable wanting to put down the Juggernaut, except at the very last second, you have Deadpool being able to sneak up behind Juggernaut and teleport him and Juggernaut away. Now, our heroes did not see Deadpool. All they saw was that Juggernaut had teleported away, and that is it. And so for our heroes, they're kind of wondering, what in the world is going on here? Where did Juggernaut go to? Now, right after that, you didn't have X-Force realize that S.H.I.E.L.D. is there. But S.H.I.E.L.D. is not there for Juggernaut nor Black Tom. They're there for Cable, because let's not forget, in our last video, Commander Bridge, who works right under Nick Fury, was told to bring Cable in. And so they arrived to get Cable. But he was also able to teleport away with his team, leaving Spider-Man behind, kind of like, what in the world is going on? And the book really ends on that note right there, kind of leaving us wondering, when will Cable have to deal with Bridge? But also, what is Deadpool actually up to when it comes to Black Tom and Juggernaut? But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please, leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. Okay, so let's get back into our coverage over the X-Men. Really, we have to jump back over to X-Force, and we have not really talked about X-Force in a good while because, well, we had to do a lot of Wolverine comics, but hey, you know what? We're done with Wolverine for the time being, so now it's time for us to get deep into some more X-Force comics, even though the artwork is not that really amazing, but the stories are somewhat good to cover. Now, for the next couple of days on our channel here, we're going to cover a lot of X-Force books and then jump back over to the other X titles. Now, with that being said, today's story is going to be about the idea of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But before we are able to actually dive into the whole concept of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, we have to pick up with Deadpool. Now remember, Deadpool around this time in Marvel Comics was still a new character. We're still learning everything about the character. All we knew at this point in time that, well, he's working for somebody known as Mr. Tolliver. And apparently Tolliver wanted the Juggernaut, but also Black Tom as well. So at the end of our last video, when it came to X-Force fighting against those two characters, Deadpool at the very last second was able to save both of them and bring them back over to Mr. Tolliver. And then you have Tolliver say, you know what, this is great, but first let's get some doctors to fix up Black Tom, but now my plans may continue on. And that's the only time we are actually able to see see Mr. Tolliver in the opening pages of this chapter. But now we can jump over to the whole concept of the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now, let me say real quick, around this time Marvel Comics, you didn't have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants for a very good reason why. So at first, you have Magneto being the one to lead the original version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. You then had Mystique take up the mantle as the leader, but after that, you then had the different members of the Brotherhood begin to work for the government, and they were called Freedom Force, but that deal fell through. And so with that deal falling through, you're now having Toad trying to bring back a new version of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. Now at this point in time, it's him and the Blob. Now these two characters are trying to bring in somebody else to join their ranks, and that will be Carl Lycos. Now Carl Lycos first appeared back in, I want to say, X-Men number 60 back in the 1960s. Now for Carl Lycos, you really know him for his alter ego, Sauron. And I really hope I pronounced that name correctly, guys. I know he's a classic character. I try my best, but sometimes my speech just messes me up. But when it comes to Sauron, Sauron is a classic X-Men villain. Now, the whole point of Carl Lycos was that when he was a young boy, him and his father actually explored an area called Terra del Fuego, and I really hope I pronounced that last word correctly as well. But while being there, they found some mutated dinosaurs, to be more exact, pterodactyls. Now, one of those mutated pterodactyls actually bit Carl when he was a young boy, but over time, it seemed like he was just okay. But then he learned that he had the ability to actually, absorb other people's life energy. And that brought in the X-Men when he was trying to absorb Havoc's energy. And when doing that, it unlocked his alter ego, his human-like dinosaur version of a pterodactyl. Now, the only way he is able to actually keep that form is if he is able to continue to absorb other people's life energy. But a lot of times, when he is in other form, is a completely different person. It's kind of like Bruce Banner in the Hulk, where you have Bruce and you have the Hulk. Two different personas. Now, with that being said, you have Toad and also Blob saying, we want you to join in the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But now we have to jump over to the character known as Gideon. Now, we have actually talked about this character before, but we're still learning more about the actual character by this point in our coverage over X-Force. All we technically know is that Gideon was a close friend of Sunspot, but apparently Gideon had killed off the father of Sunspot, which didn't allow Sunspot to actually take over the company. Now, for Gideon, we already know that this guy is a bad guy, so that means that there must be a good reason why he had killed off the father of Sunspot to allow Sunspot to take over the company. And really, you have Gideon kind of controlling the company through Sunspot, because the young man has no idea how to run the company, but his close friend Gideon does. And so you have Gideon trying to lead Sunspot into the ways of how to run a company. But at the end of our last video, when it came to X-Force, they did have a run-in with Gideon because Gideon and Sunspot were technically being held as hostages by Black Tom and Juggernaut, while they were, pulling off a semi-terrorist attack at the World Trade Center. And so you had X-Force doing their best to take down the bad guys. But you have Gideon right now on live television telling a completely different story by saying, no, Cable and X-Force are not good mutants. They are bad mutants. And matter of fact, they have an agenda. Their agenda is to push the idea that mutants should take over the world. They should be first class. That mutants are tired being suppressed down by the human race. But for Gideon, he's saying mutants are not being pushed down by the human race. That matter of fact, the humans are trying to work with the mutants, which honestly is completely not true. But for Gideon, he's saying that right now. And so with him saying that, but also pushing the idea that X-Force are actually bad people who may have been working with Black Tom and Juggernaut, who just pulled off a terrorist attack, now X-Force is technically most wanted. But now we have to jump back over to, well, James Prowlstar, better known as Warpath. Now, this section alone is really more the idea of reminding us, why did Warpath join X-Force? Well, you see, when he came to his tribe, they were all killed off. You see, he came back home thinking that he'll now live a quiet life, to only find out that his entire tribe was killed off and now he's the last man standing. But he also found a Hellfire Club mask that was left behind that kind of told him it was the Hellfire Club that killed off his entire tribe. And he believes it was Emma Frost because he was part of the Hellions, and the Hellions were Emma Frost students. And well, Emma Frost was part of the inner circle of the Hellfire Club. But now we have to jump over to Shatterstar. Now, for you big fans out there of Shatterstar, please do not go out of your way telling us the entire story of the character, because right now at this point in our coverage over X-Force, we don't know much about him, just a tad bit. But we do see him currently in the Danger Room just trying to work out, except then he is confronted by Feral. Now, can I say real quickly that I'm not a huge fan of Feral, and the only reason why, because around this time in Marvel Comics, there was another character that was, similar to Feral, and that was Wolfbane. But they pushed Wolfbane off the New Mutant team, and now she's on X Factor. But to replace her, we now have Feral. Now, we're still learning about the character, but we do know that Feral does have a wild side to her, meaning the idea that sometimes she actually does go feral. But also, it seems that she might have a crush on Shatterstar, and she's trying to tell him, like, hey, when you're free, you and I should do some dirty stuff in the bedroom. But we also see that X-Force is now going to receive another new team member, and that would be Siren. Now, Siren is actually the daughter of Banshee, and really her powers are just like her father's powers. But when it comes to Siren, she's also the niece to Black Tom. Now, in our last video for X-Force, she was trying her best to stop her uncle, but the problem was her uncle and the Juggernaut was just too much for her to handle. And so luckily X-Force was there to help out. But now, because X-Force is technically been labeled as most wanted thanks to Gideon, she's kind of like, you know what? It's probably best for me to stay here with you guys to have some kind of cover, to have some kind of backup, but also I have nowhere else to go. And so bam, just like that, she had to join X-Force. But now we have to jump over to Washington, D.C. to pick up with good old G.W. Bridge, Nick Fury, Henry Gyrich, and also Val Cooper. Now, here's the thing. You have all four characters currently talking about the idea of what to do with Cable. Because for Henry Gyrich, he's down with the idea of just go ahead and take Cable down in X-Force as well. But we also have to remember that Henry Gyrich never did like mutants. He always felt like mutants were going to be a problem. So for him, hey, Cable is a mutant, he gotta go. He also tells us that Sebastian Shaw had gave Henry a lot of money to begin Project Wide Awake once again. Now, I'm not gonna sit down and explain about what that is for right now. I'm going to save that for a later video. Now for S.H.I.E.L.D., Nick Fury and also GW Bridge, they're not really down with the idea of going after Cable until they're able to know what is his actual end game. Like, what is Cable trying to do? And once they're able to actually get that information, then they can decide if they should step in and bring him down or go ahead and let Cable do his own kind of thing. Now, Val Cooper, she's there because she also works for the government, but let's not forget, she does have her own government X-Men team. That would be X-Factor, except this time, X-Factor is not really up to par to call themselves a team, but also to go after X-Force. But let's jump back over to Toad, who's trying to bring back the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, where we see Toad kind of forcing Kyle to go through the actual process to turn back into his alter ego, Sauron. And so you have to remember that the only way to kind of bring that alter ego out is to have him absorb life energy. Now, Kyle does not want to become his alter ego, but Toad said, nah, man, you are going to be that guy once again. And he forced Kyle to go ahead and absorb the life energy of his own wife, Kayla. She dies right there, but Sauron does come back, and so now you have 3 members of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but we're not going to stop there. But now we can jump over to Strife as we dive into X-Factor issue number 6. Now for Strife, let's not forget that he is the leader for a group called the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, we're still learning more about the actual group, but we do know that their main goal is to apparently help out the mutant race, to fight back against the human race who are supposedly suppressing down the mutant race. Now with that being said, Strife also has other goals that will soon be revealed to us in later story arcs down the road, but he also tells us that even though you have all these new characters or new players in the mutant community who believe that they are the big movers in the actual mutant race, that he is still the #1 big mover, meaning that all his plans outweighs the other character plans when it comes to what's happening to the mutant race. We also see that when he does take off his helmet, once again we see Cable, but we already know this is not Cable. But let's get back over to the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, and the reason why, because we see them currently in the tunnels of the Morlocks. Now remember, the Morlocks are a group of mutants who, unfortunately, when they had gained their mutant abilities, well, their bodies had changed to the point where they're no longer able to hide in public, so they hide in the tunnels of New York, the Morlock tunnels. Now, we see the Brotherhood trying to make a deal with the Morlocks, trying to bring both groups together to begin the process of having the mutant race get rid of the human race. Now, for Toad, he kind of looks at the Morlocks as like, okay, you guys are a group of mutants, and some of you guys are powerful, but like, you're just soldiers to me I need to have. Like, you're not big hitters. Now for Mask, he believes that his group is big hitters. But before you have the two sides being able to actually make a deal, you did have a new character appear, and her name is Thorn. And we're gonna learn a tad bit about Thorn in this video and her connection to Pharaoh. Now for Thorn, she says, if you want the Morlocks to join your side, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, you're gonna have to do us a favor. You see, while Mask was leader, he let someone go, and that person is Pharaoh, and we want her back. So if you are able to bring her back, dead or alive, that will be really great, and then we will actually help you guys out. We'll join your army. And matter of fact, you're gonna have some of the Morlocks help the Brotherhood to complete this mission. But now we have to jump over to Domino and Cable. Now, these pages right here really does show the idea that, there's something going on between Domino and Cable. Like, they might be friends with benefits, but you do have Domino bring up the idea of, hey, Cable, like, when are you going to tell the others about your actual origin? Like, I know your origin, but they don't know your origin. But for Cable, he's saying, when I feel like I am ready. But at the same time, he says Cannonball and Boom Boom are still too high almighty, meaning that they're still too goody two-shoes. They're not really like the other members of the X-Force, down with the idea of getting dirty when they're going up against their other enemies. So for him, that's a good enough reason to not actually tell them his actual origin. Now, something else we have to remember that in an earlier video we had did over X-Force, there was a moment where Feral had almost killed off Cannonball because, well, she went feral and she went too far in one of their training sessions. So ever since that moment, Cannonball and Boom Boom have kind of been on edge around her. They don't like her. And really, you have Boom Boom express the idea that even though they're teammates, she does not have to like her at all. Now for Feral, she does tell us that for Boom Boom kind of saying some hurtful things to her, that she had made a very huge mistake, which could possibly mean that we might see Feral go, well, feral again on Boom Boom and Cannonball. Now, we do see another training session going on between Warpath and also Shatterstar. Now, the training session for me really shows that it's the beginning of these two characters trying to build a bond with one another. The reason why I'm saying that because you have Warpath trying to show Shatterstar that he can't go into every single battle like he's doing some kind of TV show. Because remember, Shatterstar comes from the Mojoverse, and the Mojoverse is really big on entertainment. And for Shatterstar, he was sometimes part of that entertainment. And so for Warpath, more of, you have to take things more seriously when we jump into battles. But for Warpath, more of, well, yeah, you're right, but at the same time, you are being driven right now by the flames of your anger because you're so mad about the idea of losing your tribe. That anger might get the best of you and could possibly lead into the moment where it could get you killed. Now, you do have Siren being able to jump in and have both guys stop, but why have the two guys talking being friends again? You didn't have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants appear, and this begins the process of us jumping into the next chapter, X-Force issue number 7, where we see X-Force now fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but also fighting against some members of the Morlocks as well. Now, we have to remember that Warpath never truly met the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants because when he was on the Hellions, and really when we had the New Mutants, the Brotherhood did not really cross over with the New Mutants like they did with the X-Men. So for Warpath, he has no idea who in the world is Toad, Blob, Pyro, or what in the world is the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But luckily, you do have Siren being able to explain things to him. But either way, as we get into the opening pages for today's chapter, we actually see those three characters, Siren, Shatterstar, and Warpath, fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But there's something else going on behind the scenes. You see, while you have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants fighting against those members of X-Force, you did have some members of the Morlocks being able to sneak their way into the base of X-Force, hoping to get close enough to take out Feral, but also take out the other members of X-Force. Now, as soon as they are able to get inside, they're then confronted by, well, Cable and some other members of X-Force. Now, let's not forget that Thorn, one of the Morlocks, is actually the bigger sister to Feral, and apparently there's a lot of bad blood between those two characters. Now, we are not technically told, like, hey, what is the big problem right now between Pharaoh and also Thorn? All we get the chance to know in this moment is that apparently they are sisters. But apparently, when it comes to Thorn, she always been picking on Pharaoh. And sometimes seems like she's trying to kill off Pharaoh. But these two characters do have a lot of bad blood between each other. And that bad blood really shows in this section right here, because the members of X-Force who are fighting against the Morlocks inside their base, the power gets turned off. And so unfortunately, our heroes are not really well equipped to fight in the dark. But the Morlocks, they are. And so you have Cable say, we have to get the heck out of here and take this battle topside so that we are able to see. But Pharaoh, she's not listening. And the reason why, because she wants to kill off her big sister. But the problem is, her big sister shows that she's just too much for Pharaoh to handle. And so unfortunately, Pharaoh does get taken out by Thorn, and it does seem like Thorn is about to kill off her little sister. Now, the ending for today's chapter is where I kind of want to end off for today's video. The whole idea of a cliffhanger, because once you have X-Force or some of the members of X-Force who were inside the base being able to get back outside, they're then confronted by Sauron. And you have Cannonball trying his best to take on Sauron, but unfortunately, he gets stabbed by one of Sauron's rings. Wings, had a hard time saying that. Either way, it now does seem like that Cannonball once again has been stabbed, but this time could possibly be dead. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over the X-Men. And really, we're going to jump back over to X-Force Comics. And the reason why, because we are currently working our way up to the next crossover that we are going to talk about on my channel. And that would be the Executioner song. Now, before we are able to properly jump into that crossover, there are a lot of stories that we had to sit down and actually cover before we are able to jump into that crossover. And so we have to jump back over to X-Force once again. Now, at the end of our last video for X-Force, we had saw the return of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but also we saw the death of Cannonball, who was actually killed off by another character known as Sauron. And so as we dive into today's three-part story arc, we're going to see if Cannonball is truly dead, but also we are going to begin the idea of discovering a new concept that was given to us in the early 1990s by Marvel Comics, the whole idea of the externals. But also, we are going to begin the actual reason why Cable had formed X-Force 4. And so getting into the opening pages of today's video, we actually pick up where the last video left off at. The whole idea that Cannonball is killed off. Now, you have Cable and also Boom Boom freaking out about the idea that the possibility of Cannonball being dead. And really, you have Sauron telling our heroes like, nah, this guy is dead. There's no way he survived a stab from one of my wings. So unfortunately, your man is dead. Now, as soon as you have Cable kind of realize in the possibility that Cannonball is dead, he begins to think back to what is his actual mission. Why did he come here to form X-Force? And so now we have to jump back into the past. Now, with this flashback, we do pick up many years ago where apparently Cable, who came from the future, who went back in time to form his own team of characters, better known as the Wild Pack. Now, we do learn that Domino and GW Bridge and also Garrison Kane, aka Weapon X, was also part of this team. But we're also getting our first look at two new characters who were part of the Wild Pack. That will be Hammer and also Grizzly. Now, we actually see our heroes attacking a Hydra base. And the reason why, because they were hired by another organization to steal an item that Hydra had actually stolen from the other organization. I'm going to tell you right now, it was AIM, Advanced Idea Mechanics, who were the ones who actually hired the WoW Pack to steal back what Hydra had stolen from them. Now, something I really do want to talk about is the actual origin of Cable, because at this point in time in Marvel Comics, a lot of fans wanted to know what is the actual origin of Cable. Now, there are some books that we're going to talk about that came out after these books right here that fully explain the actual origin of Cable. Now, with that being said, for the WoW Pack, they don't know much about Cable because they're not like your usual superhero team, where you have a team, they have a base, they come together to solve big time situations. Instead, for Cable, he's somebody from a different time who came back to the past to complete different missions. And when he needs help on those missions, he calls in the WoW Pack. And so they're not really like your usual superhero team. It's really more like they work for Cable to get that money. But once they're able to, take down Hydra and give back the stolen item over to AIM, you then have our heroes go their separate ways. And really, you have Cable go back to his own time. Now, we do see Cable going back to his own time, the far future. Now, here's the catch. We don't really get the chance to see or learn much about the future. Apparently, the future is somewhat safe, but at the same time, also a very dangerous place. Now, we do see Cable being confronted by a group of robots, and these robots are named after different people. Scott Summers, Jean Grey of course, and Hank, of course, Hank McCoy, different members of the X-Men. But then he goes over to his computer, better known as the Professor. Now, the Professor, the computer, usually has a lot of information about the past to kind of help Cable out when it comes to going back in time to complete different missions. Now, you then have the Professor tell Cable about the possibility of an awakening of a new High Lord in the past. Now, this new High Lord is apparently, Sam Guthrie, better known as Cannonball. And apparently, with him being a High Lord is something very important for Cable, that he has to go back in time to actually help out this High Lord, Cannonball. But like we saw in the present day, Cannonball was just killed off by Sharon. And so the question is, are we going to actually be able to learn what is a High Lord, and also how can Cannonball be one of those High Lords? And so as we dive into the next chapter, issue number 9, we actually pick up with Cable trying to rush Cannonball over to the medical lab, hoping to find a way to save Cannonball's life, or to see if Cannonball is actually going to be a High Lord. Because apparently a High Lord is somewhere where you have the ability to come back from the worst kinds of injuries. And so you have Cable rush over there. Now, for Boom Boom and Domino, really Boom Boom, she's kind of wondering what in the world can they possibly do to save Cannonball's life, because to her, he's dead. Like, the man was stabbed. There's no way he can come back to life. But you have Cable tell her, I need you to be quiet and just give me some cover, because right now my goal is to get him to the med lab and see if I can actually save his life. And really, the X-Force team is still fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. So while you have Cable trying to get over to the med lab, Boom Boom has to cover him. And really, Boom Boom is not doing a great job because she does get overrun very easily by Thorn. But luckily for her, you do have Domino appear. Now, Domino was not really in the earlier chapters in our last video when it came to this battle. And so this is Domino saying, hey, I'm here now, and hey, I'm going to show you what I can actually do. And she beats down on Thorn. Now, really, the way the story is going, the whole idea of Domino not being there at first is going to be very important at the very end of our video here. Now, you do have Cable being able to go ahead and get Cannonball back into the med lab, but he's not really doing anything to save his life because apparently he was told that Cannonball would start living after he was killed. When his death happens, that is when he will start living. And so this is Cable saying, come on, man, I need you to come back to life. But that is also when you have Cable being confronted by Sauron. Now, we also get reminded of the idea that, well, some of the X-Force is fighting against the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants outside the actual building, so the actual base of X-Force. So you do have basically Shatterstar, Siren, and also Warpath working together to fight against the Blob, because the Blob is somewhat of a hard character to take down because his durability, but at the same time, they were able to find his actual weak spot, his mouth. Now you do have Blob just go ahead and jump off a cliff knowing that he'll survive the fall, but it's also Blob saying like, hey, listen, it's 3 against 1 and you guys had just found my weak spot, meaning that I have to get the heck out of there, which honestly, the good thing he did, because when it comes to X-Force, they don't really take prisoners. They're more like, hey, you know what? We're gonna go ahead and kill you off. So you do have Blob being able to escape just barely. Now, something else I should probably mention is why the Brotherhood is fighting against the X-Force. And it's all because what we saw in our last video. You see, around this time in Marvel Comics, you didn't have the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. And the reason why, because, well, at that point in time, they had just got done working for the government and they were called Freedom Force. You see, in the early days of Marvel Comics, Magneto was the leader of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But then it was Mystique. But then later on, it was actually Toad. But Toad would not take over the team until this point right here in the 90s, just out of nowhere. And his main goal is to get rid of the humans. But he also realized he needs an army. So why not team up with the Morlocks? But the Morlocks said, hey, if you want our help, you have to take out X-Force, but also bring back the person known as Pharaoh, who was basically a prisoner for the Morlocks, but had escaped, and now with X-Force. And so that is why you have the Brotherhood, and technically the Morlocks there as well, trying to fight against X-Force. Now, this isn't the first time X-Force has gone up against the Morlocks, and really for Cable, it is most definitely not the first time that he had a run-in with the Morlocks. And so for Cable, he's all like, you know what, I'm done with you, Mask, because around this time, Mask was the leader of the Morlocks. Now remember, the Morlocks are a group of mutants who, unfortunately, when they had gained their mutant abilities, it changed their body appearance as well. And so because of that, they no longer had the ability to hide in the public. And so they all went down into the tunnels of the Morlocks. Now, for Cable, like I said, he's done with Mask, the leader of the Morlocks, because they already had a few run-ins. And so for Cannonball being supposedly dead, you have Shatterstar and also Cable work together to stab Mask. And we're kind of left to believe that Mask is dead. And the same goes for Sauron as well, who was killed off by Pharaoh. And so with those two characters now dead, it really shows that X-Force is not playing around. They're not going to take any prisoners at all. But then at the very end of this chapter, well, you have Cannonball walk out the room. He's all like, hey guys, what did I miss? And for everyone, they're kind of wondering, how in the world is Cannonball alive at this moment? Now we have to jump over to, well, the character known as Weapon X. Now, for the character better known as Weapon X, his real name is Garrison Kane. Now, Garrison Kane is a new character around this time in Marvel Comics, and unfortunately, we don't know much about the character. All we truly know is that he does have a past with Cable. Matter of fact, he was on the Wild Pack with Cable in the past in the earlier chapter that we had already talked about. But in a couple issues we already talked about, he had a backstory story where he was basically trying to handle a smuggling ring, except when he arrived at the warehouse that could be involved with the smuggling ring, he finds out is actually the Mutant Liberation Front. And of course, that group is being led by no other than Strife. And so when he arrived at the warehouse to shut the place down, he had to fight off a few members of that group. But then he heard somebody teleporting the group out of there, another character known as Zero. Now, when it came to Weapon X, he decided to follow the other characters through the portal, and it led him and the others heading back over to the main base for the actual team, the base for the Mutant Liberation Front. But when he arrived at their base, he was confronted by Strife. Now remember, we don't know much about the character, really no one truly does, but this begins the whole idea of us kind of learning a tad bit more about the character. But now we dive into X-Force issue number 10, and we actually pick back up with Gideon. Now, this is the point where we actually begin to learn more about the character. If you see my other videos on X-Force, I've been saying that we're going to learn more about the character of Gideon down the road in our coverage over the X-Men, because at first, when he appeared, he was one of the big questions in the early comics for X-Force, because he was a very interesting character, but at the same time, we were not getting any kind of information about him. That all changed with this book alone, because this is where we actually sit down and talk about the externals. Now, we don't get the full idea what the externals truly are, but we do get a hint at the idea that this is a group of mutants that have lived a very long time. Possibly they have the ability of immortality, but down the road in later books, you'll have those books fully dive into the actual origin and the whole idea of the concept of these characters. But we do learn why Gideon was going after Sunspot, because they believe that he was the next external to join their ranks. But the problem is, Gideon realized that no, he is not the next High Lord to join their rank. He realized it's Cannonball. And guys, remember, Cable said he went back in time to find Cannonball because he was supposed to be the next High Lord. The High Lords are externals, and that is apparently Cannonball as well. Now, something else I do want to mention is that while we're learning more about the externals, you have Weapon X Kane beginning to learn a tad bit more about Strife, knowing that Strife has been the main mission for Cable for many years. But when you have Strife take off his helmet, he reveals the face of Cable. And so for Kane, he believes that this entire time he has been played by Cable, not knowing in the possibility that Strife could be a clone of Cable or possibly a twin of Cable. I'm just pretending like we have no idea what's really happening, but we already know the whole story of Strife. Either way, so while we're learning about the externals, we also have Kane trying to learn more about Strife. Now, when it comes to the externals, we already know about Gideon, but we're also getting our first look at some of the other externals right now. So for example, there's Saul, there's Burke, there's Absalom, and there's also Nicodemus. And I really hope I pronounced the last two names correctly. But a lot of stuff is happening right now that's building up for the next crossover that's coming very soon. Now, getting back over to X-Force, they're kind of wondering still, what's going on with Cannonball? Now, Cable, he knows that technically Cannonball is an external, but you have Cable say, guys, listen, we just fought the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants and the Morlocks as well. We got to make sure the base is actually secure. So everyone else who's not me nor Cannonball, get out there and make sure that everything is okay. But on top of that, go ahead and lock up Thorn, the evil sister to Pharaoh, but also get rid of the bodies of Mask and also Saran as well. will deal with the bodies later and use their bodies as a way to send a message towards the Brotherhood, but also the Morlocks as well. But you didn't have Cable sit down with Cannonball and say, listen, man, so you are an external, like you are High Lord. What that means is that you have immortality. You can't die. Like, that's the whole reason why I came back in time to figure out what to do with you, because I was told that you would be the next High Lord. And you also have Cable tell Cannonball the true reason why Sunspot left the team, because Gideon believed that Sunspot was the next High Lord and tried to begin the process of removing Sunspot away from the X teams so that he can be brought in with the rest of the High Lords. But now Gideon knows, no, it's not Sunspot, but he also knows it's Cannonball. Either way, when it comes to Cable, he says, that's the whole truth. Like, that is why I formed X-Force. That is why I came back in time to find you, to help you, because I knew that you are the next High Lord to be reawakened. Reawaken, had a hard time saying that. But now we have to jump over to Department K. Now, Department K is technically this secret government branch for Canada. And really, they are responsible for the relaunch of the actual Weapon X program. Now, we don't know that just yet, but it kind of is hinted at the idea of why Kane is called the current Weapon X. Now, with all that being said, he still works for them. And when he gets back there, he says, guys, we were right. Cable is bad. Call up SHIELD, call up Bridge to tell them they were correct, that Cable has to be taken down. Now, apparently, they have a weapon that they can use to bring Cable down, but the actual man in charge of that department says no, but they do have somebody else who could possibly help them, and that would be, well, good old Richter. Because if you saw my New Mutant videos leading into X-Force, we were told that Richter does not like Cable at all. There's a long history between those two characters. We don't know what the actual history is just yet. All we know is that Cable had did something to Richter's father. But now we have to jump over to Deadpool as a way to wrap up today's video. Now, like I said in our last couple of videos, Deadpool was still a very mysterious character. We were still learning a lot about him, but the one thing we did know about Deadpool was that he was working for a character known as Mr. Tolliver. And apparently Mr. Tolliver has some big plans for everyone involved in X-Force, but we had no idea what those plans are. But we do learn that apparently he has a spy on X-Force. And honestly, it made a lot of sense who that spy would be. It's Domino. And so you have Tolliver say, I have not heard back from Domino in a very good while. So Deadpool, I think it's time for you to have a one-on-one conversation with Domino to figure out why she's not reporting back to us. But this is what Okay, so let's get back into our coverage over X-Force once again. And we actually pick up with the idea of Deadpool going after Domino. Now, something you have to remember. At the end of our last video, we learned that, well, Mr. Tolliver, this mysterious character that Deadpool is working for, had apparently got very upset that Domino has not been reporting back, which basically means that Domino is actually a double agent. She's not really trying to help out Cable. She's really a spy for Mr. Tolliver. Or it also seems like that maybe she was a spy, but now she has fallen in love with Cable, that she's no longer trying to hurt Cable. Either way, Mr. Tolliver told Deadpool, hey, I need you to go have a one-on-one conversation with Domino. And so Deadpool left to go confront Domino. But as we dive into X-Force issue number 11, we don't actually pick up where the last video left off at just yet. Instead, we actually jump over to X-Force going into the tunnels of the Morlocks. Now remember, the Morlocks are a group of mutants who, unfortunately, when they had gained their mutant abilities, it also changed their body appearances as well. And so because they no longer have the ability to hide in public, being a mutant, they have to go hide in the tunnels of New York. Now, with that being said, and around this time in Marvel Comics, they were being led by a guy known as Mask. And Mask was trying his best to make a name for himself, but he also made a deal with the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. If they were able to work together to take down X-Force, but to also recapture Feral, one of the members of X-Force, the Brotherhood will basically have the Morlocks be part of their army. Now, at the end of that story arc, we saw Cable and X-Force kill off Mask. And so you had Cable say, enough is enough. The rest of the Morlocks need to know that we are not a group to be messed with. And so he grabbed the body, really the head of Mask, and took the head back over to the tunnels of the Morlocks and say, hey, the rest of you Morlocks, if any of you guys try to come after us, just know you are going to end up like your boss here, who's now officially dead. And you have X-Force leave just like that. But now we can actually jump over to the idea of Deadpool going after Domino. Now, we jump back over to the base of X-Force, and when we do that, we actually see Shatterstar once again going through another training session. And I feel like almost every single time a new story arc starts off, we see Shatterstar doing some kind of training session. Either way, while he is training, he is then confronted by Deadpool. Now, this battle is very short-lived, and really, Deadpool tells us that he does know how to kill off Shatterstar. He has studied Shatterstar and knows so many different ways to actually take him out. But for Deadpool, he didn't come here to the base of X-Force to kill anybody. He came here to talk to Domino, to figure out what in the world is she actually doing being a member of X-Force. But with that being said, you do have Deadpool being able to easily take out Shatterstar. But now we can actually get into the battle between Deadpool and Domino. Now, this battle does last for a good amount of pages, but really for X-Force, it's all about the action rather than the actual, well, story. And so we do see Deadpool and Domino go at it. And really, it does seem like they're evenly matched. But you do have Deadpool being the one to be able to pull the win out. But he does tell Domino, I only came here to technically talk to you, quotation marks, to kind of inform you to get your act together, because you were not put here to fall in love with Cable, to actually be part of the whole X-Force team. You were put here to be a spy, to report back to Mr. Tolliver. So I'm going to leave, and hopefully we do hear back from you. But the next time we see each other, it better be a good meeting rather than a bad one, because hey, the next time it's bad, I'm going to kill you. But now we have to jump over to Weapon X, and not the actual Weapon X, but the guy with the code name better known as Weapon X. You see, for Garrison Kane, he works for Department K, and Department K is Canada's secret government force. Now, they had relaunched the Weapon X program, and they had turned Garrison Kane into their next weapon, a cyborg basically, and he took up the code name Weapon X. Now, when it comes to Garrison, we had learned that he does have a past connection with Cable, and that'll be the idea that in the past, Cable had another team called the Wild Pack, and Garrison Kane was part of that team. Now, we did learn that something happened after he was part of that team that led him becoming a cyborg thanks to Weapon X. But either way, in our last video, Garrison Kane was on a mission where he was then confronted by different members of the Mutant Liberation Front. Now, that actual terrorist group is being led by Strife, and you had Weapon X, well, be confronted by Strife. And when you had Strife take off his helmet, he looked just like Cable. Now, we are just pretending like we have no idea what's going on. We actually do. But with that being said, for Garrison Kane, he believes that Strife is actually Cable. That means that Cable is actually a leader of a terrorist group. And so after learning that, he went back over to G.W. Bridge, who works for S.H.I.E.L.D. And he said, hey, we need to go ahead and take down Cable because he is leading the Mutant Liberation Front, the terrorist group. Now for Bridge, to him, that makes no sense. Why would Cable lead both teams, X-Force and also the MLF group, against each other? And so for Bridge, he wants more proof. But for Kane, no, we don't have time for proof. It's time to bring Cable down. And so he launches Weapon Prime, a new team of characters to go after Cable. Now, one of those characters we actually seen before, and that would be Richter, because remember, we had learned that Richter also does not like Cable either, because something happened to Richter's father thanks to Cable. Now, the ending of this chapter, we actually pick up with Mr. Tolliver. Now, again, we still don't know much about the actual character. We do know about, like, who the different people who are working for him, but that's really it. And apparently he has a big plan coming down the road. But you then have Mr. Tolliver walk into this chamber where he is apparently keeping somebody. And when he gets to the bottom of the actual chamber, we kind of find out that he's keeping Domino. And so it's kind of confusing because we saw Deadpool leave Domino behind, but now we see Domino here being held as a prisoner. So now the question is there two different, well, Dominoes? But as we dive into X-Force issue number 12, we did pick up in Madripoor. Now, Madripoor is a small country in Marvel Comics where, you know, you are technically allowed to get away with most crimes in that country. I say most, not all, but most crimes. Now, with that being said, we are actually picking up with a new external. Now, remember, externals around this point in our coverage over the X-Men is still a new concept. We're still learning the idea of what the externals truly are, but we do get the idea that there is a small group of them and they may have the ability of immortality. Now, we do pick up with a character known as Cruel, and Cruel is the latest externals that we are going to learn about. And we see him being very upset that he was technically cheated out of a game of poker or some kind of card game at a bar. But then he's confronted by Gideon. Now remember, when it comes to Gideon, we at first had no idea who he was, but then we slowly begin to learn more about the character. We also learn that he is also an external. Now, he was looking for the most recent High Lord, the newest external who would have the ability of immortality. And at first, he believed it was Sunspot, somebody he had stayed close to for a very long time, to only find out that he was wrong, it was Cannonball. But now he is here to recruit Cruel to help him get Cannonball onto their side. But now we have to jump over to X-Force. Now, when we do, it's the point where we now have X-Force technically finding out what Domino truly is, that she is a spy for Mr. Tolliver. But here's the big catch with that though, guys. You see, with her being a spy for Cable, he wants to know why she is a spy, and we begin to learn a tad bit more about the character Cable. You see, we begin to learn that Cable, before he had dismantled the Wild Pack, something happened to certain members in the Wild Pack. Pack, like Hammer and also Kane. Now, we already know that Kane is actually Weapon X, and they already had bad blood, but that bad blood got a whole lot worse now because Kane believes that Strife is Cable, that Cable is leading a terrorist group known as the Mutant Liberation Front. And with all that being said, apparently something else happened to other members of Wild Pack, including Domino, where the entire team technically hates Cable. And so when it came to Tolliver, when he said, "Hey, Domino, you want to get payback against Cable?" She was down instantly. But while she hung out with Cable and X-Force, she began to kind of like the team and being part of the team. And she changed her mind. And so she tells Cable, like, "Hey, Tolliver is still mad at you for what you have done to him, but I had changed my mind. I had changed sides. Now, for Cable, they need to think of a new game plan here." But now we have to jump back over to Weapon Prime, this team that believes that Cable is some kind of traitor. Now, we do kind of get a breakdown on who is on the actual roster. So you have Bridge, Weapon X, Wendigo, which honestly, I kind of want to know, why is Wendigo joining the Weapon Prime team to go after Cable, Richter, and Tiger Strike? But at the end of this section, we see them picking up another member to their team, and that would be Grizzly. Now, guys, Grizzly was actually part of the Wild Pack back in the day when Cable first had a team in his time point in Marvel Comics, alongside with Domino and also Bridge and Weapon X Kane. And so for Grizzly, it also seems like he's really down with the idea of going after Cable for something Cable did to him in the past. And so now Weapon Prime is ready to go after Cable officially. But while you have Weapon Prime getting ready to go over to the base of X Factor, well, you have Domino actually talking to Mr. Tolliver. Now, this is her trying to make him believe that she is back on his side again. And really, she does plan on blowing up the entire base of X-Force. But in reality, it was Cable who told her to do that. And the reason why? So that they can find a new base that's not really compromised by the idea that so many other people actually know about it, like the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, the Morlocks, well, now Weapon Prime, and also Mr. Tolliver. Either way, you do have Cable say, "Good job, let's go, let's get ready to blow this place up." Now, I want to jump back over to Weapon X and also Richter. And here's the reason why. So you basically have Richter telling Weapon X why he wants to go after Cable 4. And we do get reminded that technically for Richter, the reason why he hates Cable so much, because 10 years ago, Cable had killed off Richter's father. And that is the main reason why he wants to go after Cable. And so for Weapon X, that is a good enough reason to be part of Weapon Prime to go after Cable. Now, I also want to jump back over to Gideon and also Cruel. And here's the reason why. Because you have the two characters go see Sunspot. And you have basically Gideon saying, "You know what? I am done trying to work with you, Sunspot." Because remember, for Gideon, he believed that Sunspot was supposed to be the next High Lord, the next external to join his group of externals. To only find out that technically Sunspot is not the next one. That instead, it was Cannonball, which honestly is Sunspot's best friend. But either way, Gideon got it wrong. And so right now, his game plan is to get Cannonball onto his side, but to also kind of use Sunspot still to help achieve his goal to get Cannonball onto his side. But he does express by beating down on Sunspot that he's very upset that he wastes so much time trying to see if Sunspot was the next High Lord. But the ending of this chapter, we actually do pick up with Weapon Prime arriving at the base of X-Force, which means that as we dive into the next chapter, X-Force issue number 13, we're really going to get into the idea of seeing X-Force fighting against Weapon Prime in one heck of a battle. And really, this is all coming down because of Cable. And so, as we dive into X Force issue number 13, we actually get into the whole battle between Weapon Prime and also X Force. And really, the battle does go on for a good amount of pages. But while you have the battle going off, you do have some members recognizing one another. Like, for example, Cannonball and also Boom Boom, they recognize Richter because Richter was part of the New Mutants along with those characters at the tail end of the original New Mutants series. But either way, they kind of know that Richter always had bad blood with Cable. Now, with that being said, you didn't have Cable just run off. Like, it does seem like he's trying to get away, but in reality, he's not trying to get away. For Cable, it's really more of trying to get all the technology that he has in this base that came from the future, because he brought this tech to the past to help him out with his mission. But now his base is being attacked. He has to make sure that Weapon Prime will not be able to get their hands on his technology. Now, his weapons, he's not really worried about, because really X-Force and him are using those weapons as a way to fight against Weapon Prime. But the rest of technology that came from the future, it has to go, and it has to go now. And so we see Cable tell Professor, his computer AI, to begin to teleport every single thing out of there. But then he grabs a few weapons to rejoin the battle between Weapon Prime and X-Force. But now we can jump over to Gideon. Now, we do get the chance to learn the name of Gideon's company because, like I said in our earlier videos, that Gideon has been around with Sunspot's family for a very long time. And of course, with Sunspot's family having their own business, it would make sense that they'll be business friends. So Gideon has his own company as well. Now, most likely I'm going to mispronounce the name of this company, and it's really called the Orpha Research Facility. Either way, when you do have Gideon arrive at this research facility, we do learn that he's putting Sunspot through some kind of experiment. Now, we're not technically told what this experiment could be all about, but apparently there is a huge chance that Sunspot might not survive the actual ending of this whole experiment. And so we're left to wonder, could Sunspot be killed off? But getting back over to the battle between X-Force and also Weapon Prime, the battle really does end with X-Force being able to take out Weapon Prime. And honestly, they kind of feel excited about the idea of taking down Weapon Prime. And you have Cable make sure that they know they have the right to be proud of themselves, because what they were able to achieve, to be able to take down a team like this without no actual struggle. Now, after doing that, you then have Cable begin to freak out. And the reason why, because let's not forget that Cable told Domino to tell Mr. Tolliver that she was going to set up charges around the entire building to blow up the base, because right now too many people know about the actual location of the base of X-Force. But those charges were supposed to go off later than usual. Well, right after you have X-Force being able to take down Weapon Prime, well, then out of nowhere, those charges begin to go off. Those bombs are going off left and right and bringing the whole place down. And so you have X-Force and also Weapon Prime just freaking out and trying their best to get the heck out of that place before they all, be killed by the collapsed building. But then we have to jump over to, well, Mr. Tolliver, and we see him celebrating the idea of the possibility that X-Force is officially dead. And the only reason why I'm saying that because, well, we jump over to him and we see him watching the news. And you have the news reporting that there was a massive earthquake in that area where the base of X-Force was at. And right now you have authorities trying their best to find any dead bodies at all. But apparently to Mr. Tolliver, that they're not going to find any dead bodies at all. That X-Force is officially dead and they're going to stay dead. But then we see him talking to Domino. And so we're still kind of wondering if this is the real Domino, which means the other Domino is most likely a fake, somebody pretending to be her. But again, we still have no idea just yet. But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later. What's going on there, YouTube? Welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we're going to continue our coverage over X-Force. And really, this is going to be our last video as we jump into the Executioner song. Really, after this video, we got to cover some more X-Men and X-Factor, but we're getting very close into covering the Executioner song. Now, today's video, we're going to cover X-Force issues number 14 and 15. Now, these two issues kind of wrap up the early days of X-Force to kind of show us what X-Force was going to be all about. But we're also beginning to see some kind of transition where Cable is no longer the leader of the team, but now you're going to have Sam Guthrie become the actual leader of the team, but also having someone else join the X-Force team as well. Now, as we dive into today's video, there are a few things we have to remember. Starting off with the idea that, well, Domino is not Domino. Let me explain. You see, in our last video, we had learned that Domino is actually working for Mr. Tolliver, this mysterious character who's working behind the scenes to bring down Cable, but to also bring down X-Force as well. Now, we don't know exactly why. All we know is that apparently Mr. Tolliver and Cable, well, they got some bad blood between each other. But either way, though, Domino was secretly working for him, sending over information about X-Force. Now, we also learned that there is a possibility that the Domino we have been seeing is not the real Domino. You see, we have learned that the real Domino has been a prisoner for Mr. Tolliver this entire time. And so now the question is, who is the other Domino who is pretending to be Domino, but also hanging out with Cable and hanging out with X-Force as well? Now, at the end of our last video, we saw the base of X-Force get blown up because, well, after you had Cable and the rest of the X-Force team find out that Domino is technically a traitor, they used her as a way to trick Tolliver to make him believe they were going to lose their base because she was going to blow up the base. Except they're going to do that as a way to find a new base, but to also attack Tolliver without him knowing. Except X-Force had no idea that Tolliver had the passcodes to the charges. And so while you had X-Force fighting against another team of heroes, well, Tolliver was able to set the bombs off to blow up the entire base of X-Force. And so as we dive into the opening pages for today's video, we're kind of wondering, did our heroes actually survive? And so as we dive into the opening pages for X-Force number 14, we do learn automatically that Cable and Domino are actually alive and well because Cable was able to pull himself out, but also Domino from the collapsed building. Now, after doing that, for Cable, he's kind of wondering, is his team okay? Did his team actually survive? Because in our last video, X-Force was fighting against Weapon Prime, another team that's kind of working for SHIELD, but also Department K, another government agency for Canada, to bring Cable in because, well, Cable has to answer some questions. But in the middle of their battle, the bombs went off. Either way, it's now Cable wondering, did his team survive? But also, he kind of wants to go after Mr. Tolliver to actually end this battle between them once and for all. Now, getting over to the rest of X-Force, we do get confirmation that, well, they actually survived, but so did all the members of Weapon Prime, who was actually there to, well, arrest Cable and also arrest X-Force, who are kind of working with Cable. But either way, you do have both teams being able to get out of the collapsed building. Now, for X-Force, they're trying to dip out, but unfortunately, they're then confronted by more SHIELD agents because remember, Weapon Prime is a joint operation between SHIELD and also Department K. So even though most of the members of Weapon Prime is currently out of commission, well, SHIELD sent in some backup to help them bring in X-Force. But X-Force is not going to go down without a battle. But we also have to remember that there's a whole plot line involving Cannonball being external. Now, we're still kind of learning what an external actually is, but we kind of know that it has to mean the idea of being, well, immortal, having immortality. The reason why I'm saying that because while you have shields surrounding X-Force, there is another external there, and that would be Cruel, who came there because of Gideon to bring Cannonball over to Gideon and the rest of the externals. Now, getting over to Cable and also Domino, we see that Cable was able to teleport the two characters over to the Gray Malkin. Now, the Gray Malkin is a spaceship that's kind of like a secret base for Cable, but you do have Cable and Domino being able to teleport over to it. Now, you do have Cable begin to learn that X-Force had survived the ending of our last video, the whole idea of the base being blown up. But currently, X-Force is fighting against SHIELD and also Weapon Prime. Now, you would think Cable would go out of his way to help his team out, but instead, he's kind of down with the idea of just going after Tolliver. And because the Domino who's with him knows the actual location of the base of Tolliver, he's kind of like, you know what? I believe that X-Force should be able to handle their battle against SHIELD and Weapon Prime. Now, getting back over to X-Force, who's fighting against Weapon Prime and also SHIELD, we do see our heroes being able to actually hold their own against SHIELD and also Weapon Prime. And really, you have X-Force being able to take them all down without any kind of struggle. And so it really shows that with these guys being able to be with Cable for a short period of time, they have learned a lot about how to be a team, but also how to take down their enemies. Now, with all that being said, you also have Richter join X-Force because, well, with Cable now gone and missing, it's kind of like, hey, for Richter, he had no bad blood with the rest of the team, only with Cable. Now remember, we had learned that apparently Cable had killed off the father of Richter many years ago, and that was why he had joined Weapon Prime. And so for Richter, he's kind of like, Cable's gone. You know what? I see Cannonball and I also see Boom Boom, and they're two of my old friends. So why not? You know what? I'm going to join their side. And so he leaves with them as they try to find a new base for them to hide at. Now, for a brief moment, we also get reminded about Sunspot. Now, remember, when it came to Sunspot at the end of New Mutants, but also X-Force Comics, we had learned that Sunspot was being used by Gideon. Now, Gideon is an external, and he believed that Sunspot was actually the next external to be awakened. But in reality, it was Cannonball. And so over the years, you had Gideon making sure that he stayed close close to Sunspot and his family to kind of see if Sunspot was supposed to be the next external. And of course, he was wrong. But after finding out he was wrong, well, he began to put Sunspot through some kind of experiment. And we were last told that this experiment could possibly kill off Sunspot. We don't know just yet. But getting back over to the rest of X-Force, they're currently trying to find a new base for themselves. Now, you do have Warpath say, you know what? Why don't we just go over to where my tribe used to be yet? The tribe that was wiped out back in the very tail end of New Mutants. But while you have the team discussing where they should go, well, they're attacked by Krull. Now remember, Krull is an external that was sent there by Gideon to go retrieve Cannonball. And so this is him right now saying, hey, I'm here, and my goal is to get Sam Guthrie, the next external who has awoken. But let's not forget, for Cannonball, he's still kind of learning everything that's going on with him. But getting into the ending for X-Force number 14, we do see Cable and Domino arrive at the actual base of Tolliver. Now, after being able to go through some obstacles, well, when they get deep inside the actual base, they find the real Domino, who's still hooked on some kind of device, being a prisoner for Tolliver. And so for Cable, he's trying to figure out what in the world is going on here, because now he's seeing double the Domino. But then the one that came with him gets stabbed from behind by Deadpool. And you didn't have Deadpool and Tolliver appear. And this leads into Deadpool going up against Cable. And guys, it's one heck of a battle. But then we get into X-Force issue number 15. Now, the 15th issue is going to be the last issue we're going to cover for X-Force before we jump into the Executioner song. So do not expect any more X-Force until after we cover that crossover. Now, with all that being said, we actually picked back up with, well, the X-Force team fighting against Krull. Now, remember, Krull is here for Cannonball because he believes that Cannonball is the next external, and he wants to bring Cannonball over to their side, the rest of the externals. Now, Cannonball is still trying to learn what he actually is because Cable kind of gave him a tad bit of information, but not everything, to kind of get the full picture of what he is. Either way, you do have Richter being able to use his vibration powers to kind of make a hole in the aircraft they're currently in to send Krull crashing back onto the ground. Now, for our heroes, they're kind of like, that's weird, but if Krull is working for Gideon, and also Gideon might have my boy Sunspot, we need to go save Sunspot right now. But now we can jump back over to Cable and Domino, and we do learn that the Domino we have been seeing is not the real one. It's apparently Deadpool's girlfriend, Vanessa. Now, unfortunately, here in this section right here, we're not really going to learn much about Vanessa until later books down the road. So guys who have seen the Deadpool movies, telling you right now, yes, Vanessa's here, but like, we don't know much about the character just yet, just that she's the girlfriend of Deadpool, and that's really it. Either way, you do have Deadpool and Cable begin to fight against each other. And really, we have seen this before, but it's kind of like, hey, let's see it one more time. But this time, all the gloves are off. Like, they're going for the kill. So you do have both characters go back and forth. Now, luckily for Cable, Domino was able to break free, the real one. And she grabs the gun of Vanessa and actually shoots Deadpool. Now, we already know Deadpool's not dead, but with him out of the way, now Cable and Domino can shift their focus onto Mr. Tolliver, this mysterious character we're still learning about. But either way, they're heading after him now. Now, like I said a moment ago, their main mission is to find, Sunspot. And you didn't have Gideon appear on their computer screen. And Gideon says, listen, I know you want me, and I also know you want Sunspot, but you can't have both. So here's the thing. I'll give you the location of Sunspot, but you must stop trying to come after me. Do you understand? And you basically have Cannonball agree to the deal. And so you do have Gideon tell our heroes where they can find Sunspot at and some facility in New Mexico. Now, you do have our heroes being able to arrive at the location of the facility. Now, we do learn what they have been doing to Sunspot in this section alone. We learn that they're trying to see how much solar energy Sunspot can actually absorb. Because when it comes to his powers, he needs to have solar energy to activate his powers. Without solar energy, well, the guy really can't do much out in the battlefield. And so they're kind of seeing like how much can he truly absorb. And apparently they have been pushing past the limits of sunspots, but also past the limits of machines as well. Either way, you do have our heroes arriving just in time to take out all the scientists and to also break Sunspot free. Now, because he had absorbed a lot of solar energy, there's a huge chance that he's going to explode. And so you have Cannonball grab Sunspot and go straight up in the sky to make sure no one is going to be affected at all. He does explode, and both boys were able to make it out of it out of the whole explosion. And so now the question is what to do next with Sunspot. Now, for Cable and Domino, they do make it over to Mr. Tolliver, except he's trying to fly away in his helicopter. And so you do have our two heroes trying their best to jump onto the helicopter to actually stop him. Now, you do have both characters realize that the chopper is about to explode. And so you have Cable say, hey, listen, Domino, go ahead and leave. Like, I need you to stay alive so that you are able to take care of X-Force while I'm gone. And he basically pushes her off. Now, after doing that, there's a small fight scene between the two characters, Cable and Tolliver, but the chopper does blow up. And we're kind of left to wonder, did those two characters actually survive? And most likely, they may have not survived. Now, we do get confirmation that Cable did survive. The man was able to make it back to the Gray Mountain. But after doing that, you then have the professor, the AI system, ask Cable, hey, like, how are you feeling? Are you okay? And you have Cable say no, because he is tired of being the prey, meaning that it's time for him to be the hunter. He's tired of being chased after by all these different villains. It's time to put them in their place. And so this kind of goes into Cable's own solo series after the Executioner song. And really, getting back over to the rest of X-Force, with Cable now being gone, it does bring Cannonball into the role as the leader of X-Force. And if you have been watching my videos over X-Force, we kind of saw that coming, right? Like, they were slowly kind of bringing up the idea of Cannonball being the new leader of the team, just slowly kind of getting into that role. But now with Cable gone, the role is all his. But with that being said, this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.